Thank you, Charlie Pellet in New York. We'll have more in just about 20 minutes on the Monday trade, which has seen pot stocks lose the hot sauce. And we're going to talk to Nathan about that in just a moment, because look at this. Here we are, last full work week, or the last work week period of the year for Congress. And you're not surprised to hear that. The problem is the to-do list remains quite long if you care about health care premiums and the rest. So we're going to talk about Nathan here, talk to Nathan about all of this coming up with our eyes on new research from Bloomberg Intelligence that pulls us into the farm aid debate as well. This was not the most productive Congress of all time if you haven't been keeping track on your home game. Just last week, Speaker Mike Johnson talked about the need to address health care reform, the expiring subsidies at the end of the year, and Democrats call for more of the COVID-era enhanced subsidies that are just about to go off a cliff. Listen.
When the Democrats talk about health care affordability, okay, this catchphrase that they have, they are talking about one thing and one thing only. They are talking about continuing handouts to big insurance companies. They have no ideas, they have no desire to fix the broken system they created. They just want to subsidize it. And subsidy is a big word. It means they're taking taxpayer dollars and funding a broken system.
Is subsidy a big word? I don't know. If you have a terminal, maybe. Nathan's with us to pull us back from the ledge. It's not a branded fleece today, but it is a quarter zip nonetheless. It's really cold out.
Yeah, my fingers are killing me.
I mean, forget the house. Getting out of bed today is the hard part if you're anywhere between Washington and New York.
And we have football practice tonight, so we're going out there.
Do you really?
Yep.
It should be made indoors, sir.
Oh, the 9-year-olds, they love it. They're
America's dad says, get out there and do some laps. He's, of course, Bloomberg Intelligence senior U.S. policy analyst, and we actually have a lot to cover today with 5 days left. So fly out is Friday, I presume. So there's your 5 days. And you read any of the tip sheets, Nathan. You read the smart analysis. You listen to Rick and Jeannie on this program or any of the columnists at Bloomberg Opinion, and they all say it's too late. We're going off a cliff. But there is going to be some important votes that take place in the House this week. It could, and of course, one of them depends on a discharge petition. Could any of them keep this from happening?
Well, you notice how over the weekend the definition of cliff changed. I think so, because some of the remarks from the Republican lawmakers over the weekend started talking about January 15th, and that's the date when open enrollment ends. Okay. And they started talking about January 31st. That's when the next, funding bill has to get decided upon. So it's almost like this recognition that nothing's going to pass this week, and the number one plan is to do something so that we can get out of town. And so I think what happens here is you're going to see a series of votes. None of it really has chance of passage. My colleague Dwayne Wright continues to uses the words like long odds and skeptical, because at the end of the day, the Republicans have a lot of different ideas, from just extensions to also, just widespread changes to Obamacare. And at the end of the day, the only person that's going to be able to get the Republicans on board is President Trump, and he's not involved in this debate. So I think we're just going to go through the motions, and then you'll see a little bit of this again, I think, in January. But when Congress comes back in January, it's all about the funding bill that has to keep us open through past January 31st.
And then at that point, do we presume that there will be something that looks like the discharge petition, maybe extends Obamacare subsidies for a year, puts on new eligibility requirements, and the rest deals with pharmacy benefits managers? Would that all happen then? And what about the month that would be lost? Is it retroactive?
To be determined. I mean, obviously, I think what happens here is that this can go out a variety of different scenarios. I mean, some of this discharge petition talk also includes languages that Democrats aren't exactly on board with. If you talk to the Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, he even just said over the weekend that this is some of these ideas coming from the Republican Party don't really fix the underlying issue with the subsidies. So again, we'll have to see how January plays out. But at the end of the day, this is a really interesting point from the political science perspective. There's always been talk of it's easier to put subsidies and benefits on, harder to take them off. Well, it sounds like we're going over the cliff, and so we're going to have to see politically how things play out in January, because we got an election in November, and a lot of people are going to be paying attention to that.
Boy, amazing to think that we're talking about this with regard to a discharge petition. Is that the only way that gets to the floor in the meantime this week, if they get the signatures? Because the Speaker Johnson has said he would allow a vote. Maybe it's in the form of an amendment, but that's all bound up in politics as well.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a variety of different ways this can go, but at the end of the day, Speaker Johnson doesn't have a caucus that's united. And when you don't have a caucus that's united, you're going to have a fraction different ideas. You're going to have policymakers saying different things. And so I think this week is about the motion from the moderate Republicans to come out there and say, look, we're trying to extend these subsidies. But then you have conservative Republicans saying, look, I campaigned on the fact that we were going to end government spending, and this is one of the ways we do it. Both sides feel politically advantageous again, and that's one of those things where it's just
the most dangerous thing we get in Washington.
Exactly.
So enrollment ends on the 15th of January. That's the new cliff? Is that what you said?
That's what some people were saying.
That's actually really smart for everybody to know here. There is a deal, though, to give, or there was, this Fitzpatrick-Higgins bill a vote as an amendment. Is that off the table?
I don't think anything's off the table at this point. We have to see politically how it plays out. But even if you get this, and I know Representative Roy was sort of hinting that he was not on board with this idea over the weekend. So, Speaker Johnson has to look at his caucus and has to say, look, I have a group that wants to extend. I want a group that doesn't want to extend. When I don't have that type of unity, the best thing is to do nothing. And so I think when Speaker Johnson looks at the situation here, none of the solutions that Dwayne's been looking at, that our team's been looking at, none of the solutions here lead to a solution by the end of this week.
You're not running odds on this, are you?
No.
Okay. On to farm aid. This is remarkable, and I haven't seen or heard this anywhere because it's straight off of Nathan's desk. Trump's farm aid plan to bring relief, but not likely for long. We talked about this $12 billion. Some call it a bailout. You call it an aid package. You get in trouble on your own with that. The fact of the matter is, this number is woefully inadequate. The president said he was making the farmers rich again. Is that not true?
This is a Band-Aid. This is a Band-Aid solution because the farming industry has, high production costs, low crop prices, and one of our biggest trade partners, China, isn't buying soybeans. But let's take this $11 billion because it's $11 billion for 20 commodities, $1 billion in reserve for specialty crops and sugar. So let's look at that $11 billion. Now, corn is just one of those 20 commodities, and we did some back-of-the-envelope math. You can go to the USDA website. It's $93 per loss per acre in 2025 anticipated, and there's 98 million acres out there. You do that math, and it's $9 billion. So if corn alone is just one of 20, and they're looking at a $9 billion loss, this $11 billion aid is going to help the farmers in the short term in terms of seed capital expenditures related to fertilizer. And that's why when you look at our note, definitely look at the fertilizer companies, because I think a lot of this money is going to go directly to fertilizer. But that's why President Trump said in the same breath that John Deere and these other tractor manufacturers need to lower their costs. We had our industrials call first thing this morning, and our tractors analysts said, ain't happening.
Not going to happen. So we're talking about a new package in the new year?
I think you're going to see more debate. I mean, the House Republicans on the Ag Committee, a couple of them floated up to $50 billion. And just last year, at the tail end of 2024, Congress authorized $10 billion in additional payments directly to farmers. So whether it's part of this light farm bill, which I actually don't think it's going to have much chance of passage, or part of this spending debate, you are, I think, very likely going to see more discussions of additional farm aid in 2026.
Boy, that's big. That's going to be big for the lawmakers who join us from the Midwest and the other big farming states. I got to ask you about the pot stocks because, boy, this looks different than it did on Friday. There was a report here that the president was set to reschedule cannabis, having promised to do so as early as today, would sign the document. Nathan, pot stocks, hot sauce, went through the roof. Today, there's a little paranoia in the old cannabis investing community. MJ is down. The ETF is down 5%. MSOS, the U.S. cannabis ETF, is down almost 3%. Investors feeling like they were had again. What's going on here?
So I think a lot of the concern here is that when is this order coming out? If you look at President Trump's public schedule today, there's no ceremony like there was for the AI. So a lot of the marijuana investors have been calling this morning saying, hey, is he actually going to sign this? Now, what we're telling our folks is that when this order comes out, if it comes out, President Trump doesn't have the authority to unilaterally say, go forth and reschedule. He can order the Department of Justice and the DEA to move forward with reschedulation. And this process started under the Biden administration, and they're about 60, 70% of the way through at the moment. So if they really wanted to push fast, they could get this done in the beginning of next year. The concern, though, from the marijuana community, though, is that even though President Trump has said he's going to do this, he's made statements in the past saying, I'm going to do something, and then slow-walked the process. So even though we have the optimism, and we haven't seen that decline that you usually see with the hot sauce spiciness of these marijuana equities, we haven't seen that yet. So there's still optimism this gets done.
Okay.
And our view is that you should use as your base scenario that this gets done, because presidents normally don't put out orders and saying, I want you to do this, and then walk it back or not do it.
Right.
But again, he needs to actually put that order out, because until he does, we're just in this unclear situation.
So this is a paranoid optimism.
Well, there's
a
lot of retail sentiment in these stocks. I mean, you have the marijuana equities themselves, and this really goes towards the mom and pop equities as opposed to the publicly traded ones. But if you take into account that a lot of the Canadian equities are also up 30, 40%.
They have nothing to do with
this. Really doesn't apply to them. And so there's a lot of retail sentiment here. And so a lot of people are just trading off of retail sentiment.
If he does sign this, say it happens this week, it's at one point, I think the other network said that was today. Maybe it's this week. Your point is they've got 30% of this review left. What are they reviewing? Are they going through old arrest records here? Are they taking breaks at 420?
So there were over 14,000 comment letters on this. And so they have to go through every single one. And there was a portion where they were supposed to have a public hearing. And this hearing was going to be in front of an administrative judge. They were going to bring testimony. They were going to do all that. Now, President Trump can order the DOJ to essentially skip that hearing. And I think they'd still be okay. But they still have to go through this process, because from the Administrative Procedures Act perspective, if they were to really push forward, and let's just say that President Trump says, I declare it rescheduled, and they implement that, there's going to be a lawsuit on this. And if the lawsuit comes back and says you don't have the authority to do that, you broke the APA, it slows the system down even more. So just in order from their perspective to make sure that there's no more bumps on the road, they'll probably have to restart that process.
So just like the tariffs, it goes to court and we just wait.
Exactly.
In a state of paranoia. That's the readout from Nathan Dean at Bloomberg Intelligence. They are heading lower here, not by a lot. To your point, this isn't off another cliff when it comes to cannabis, so just hang on to your doobies. Look for Nathan's work on the terminal and online. I'm Joe Matthew in Washington. We'll assemble our panel next. Rick and Jeannie on the way in here, only on Bloomberg.